SaaS Backwards is sponsored by Austin Lawrence Group, specializing in demand gen for SaaS. It sure is noisy. I deleted 100 emails from vendors just this morning. Your buyer has gotten better at ignoring you, and you're gonna need a big idea if you want to cut through all that clutter. Austin Lawrence is just the right agency to help you find it. So if your campaigns are falling on deaf eyeballs, let's talk. Visit austinlawrence.com today and let's build something bigger.
Welcome to the SaaS Backwards podcast, where we reverse engineer the success of fast-growing SaaS firms and explore strategies CMOs and CEOs are using to drive their businesses forward.
Welcome to SaaS Backwards, a podcast that helps SaaS CMOs and CEOs to accelerate growth and enhance profitability. Our guest today is Tyler Lessard, VP Marketing and Chief Video Strategist at Vidyard, which calls itself the easiest way to create, host, and share videos so you can keep connecting with customers and colleagues. Hey, Tyler, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much. It is a pleasure to be here. I've been looking forward to this, honestly, all week.
That's awesome. And before we dig in, and I think we're going to have a great discussion, could you please give our listeners a little background on yourself and a little more color commentary on Vidyard?
Absolutely. So as mentioned, VP Marketing here at Vidyard. We are a video technology company servicing both marketing organizations with a full stack video hosting, management, and analytics tools, as well as sales teams with simple tools for recording and sending custom video messages, screen shares, and other videos to help continue deal processes moving forward. I've been here for nearly 8 years, which I think in the world of SaaS is like 160 years. I think that's how the math works.
They're longer than dog years for sure.
Absolutely. But over that time, I have been able to just immerse myself both in the world of video for marketing and sales, video for demand gen specifically, and then also sort of this newer world of using video as a way to humanize the sales process in a digital first business environment. So it's been a really exciting number of years. The past few years have really accelerated the use of video as everything's gone remote. And it's been a lot of fun, honestly, to be at the nexus of that to help businesses reinvent really how they connect with customers.
Yeah, it is very much, I think, a video era. And we certainly see that with our clients. And, the stuff that comes at us very much more video centric. We're focused here on this podcast on how to drive success for SaaS. And I know that's a big part of your client base. And one of the things I wanted to start talking about was the changing nature of the buying process, what buyers are looking for. Their MO is different than it was only a few years ago. And what are you guys seeing in terms of the way buyers want to learn and buy?
Yeah, you started to hit the nail on the head, no question there, that things have changed a lot over the last, obviously, 15, 20 years, but even over the last 3 to 5 years in terms of the expectations of buyers, in terms of their thresholds and tolerance for, what it is that they actually expect from brands. The biggest shift that I've seen, frankly, is the move towards a greater expectation and appreciation for on-demand self-service situations, if you will. So most of us as marketing, sales, business leaders grew up in an era where we controlled a lot of the information. And we required people, because it was the best way to do business, or so we thought, to reach out to us, to connect with us, to give us their information, to ask to speak to sales, to learn really what it is that we do, to see our products and services, and to get access to what we consider like premium information. But, the realities are these days, as we all know, information is incredibly democratized. People simply expect to be able to find content and ideas online. And the reality is, if you're not giving your buyers what it is they're looking for in a format that they can consume on their own time, if your competitor is, that is a massive risk to your business for acquiring new customers. So we really need to get behind this notion that all of us more and more prefer and expect on-demand self-service experiences. We want to be able to consume on our own time. We want to be able to share information with others in our teams. And we don't always want to have to jump through hoops or talk to a sales rep to learn about what it is a business does.
Yeah, and that's not just, one or two people's opinion, right? Are you familiar with the trust radius study
Yes.
on the customer disconnect, the B2B buyer disconnect? I mean,
Yeah.
if our listeners have not downloaded the trust radius study from 2022, it's not just Tyler saying so. The fact is the B2B buying motion is completely different than it was only a few years ago.
Yeah, it's been interesting to see. I mean, it's been coming because of just the natural rise of like digital and the democratization of information, the younger generation, who's no longer the younger generation, who, folks in, the millennial brackets who are now in more and more decision making, as well as being responsible for evaluating and making recommendations. And these individuals are digital natives. They've expected it. But what's also happened, of course, over the last few years with the pandemic and everything going truly remote, is that our mode of operating as buyers, we have more distractions typically happening throughout our days. We have less desire to quote unquote get on another Zoom call, if you will. But we also, a lot of buyers are now disparate and remote from their teams. And that's actually a really interesting thing. We talk a lot about how, now sellers are remote and they have to sell remote. Well, the bigger challenge, honestly, is that our buyers are remote and remote from each other. And so most of our people we're trying to communicate with, we're trying to convince, we're trying to educate, they aren't like hopping into a meeting room with their colleagues and chatting about what you do. Right now, they're at home, their colleagues are at home. More of them are even internationally dispersed because people are hiring remote first. So now these teams of people are dispersed. And so they need access to information that they can share with other people, that they can read and consume or watch offline. So all of that is driving us further into this need for on-demand, self-service, asynchronous information. And we need to get behind it as marketing and sales teams and be better at what we give our customers and buyers.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's sort of a little off topic, but there's definitely a move among selling teams to create these buyer repositories.
Yes.
So that they can share with their remote teams. And I think that's a solution area. If listeners got that problem, taking a look at these buyer enablement platforms.
Yes.
For really content repositories that are easy to get into and share. And especially for the enterprise deal where, the sales process could be 9 months or more, the people change. So you need to be able to invite people into the process. Kind of drilling down a little bit, maybe right back onto the website.
Yeah.
What are the things that you think people most want out of a website experience? And I know that plays into the world you guys operate in, but what do you think the top things are that if I'm a new marketing director, new VP marketing, new CMO, and I take a look at the website, it might look pretty, but what are the things that people actually want to do from your understanding, the analytics that you guys see that people want to do on those sites?
Yeah, I think this is a really big deal that a lot of organizations underestimate right now. So in this new world where more and more individuals are doing self-discovery, self-learning online before they ever reach out to you, before they ever raise their hand, the role of your website is increasingly important. So we all know we need to put better information on our websites. We need to optimize for conversions. But I find very few businesses step back and really think about it through the lens of their buyers and their audience and say, if I were on the other side visiting my website, what would be most valuable to me? What would be the most helpful to me? What would be the best experience for me as a prospect or buyer? And I can tell you, bar none, it is not a big button that says request a demo with sales. So, when I speak at industry conferences, this is very funny to watch. I always ask the crowd, if you were looking at considering a technology and you went to a vendor's website and you learned the surface level information from their bullets and so on, and you then wanted to dive deeper and you were presented with 3 different buttons on their website, which one of these would you choose? And those 3 options are book a demo, start a free trial, or watch a demo or watch a product tour. And when you ask an audience of live people and you say, who here would click on book a demo or a variant of that? Usually literally no hands go up. Like nobody's like, yeah, I totally want to book a demo with a real human, right? The reality is most of us, we don't want to take that step until we're really sure we want to engage that brand. And then you say, how many people want to start a free trial? You usually get about 30%. And then how many of you would want to watch a demo? And about 70% of hands go up. And it goes back to that notion of, we as consumers, as information consumers, want to be able to move at our own pace. We want to be able to access information that's highly valuable, but also where, again, we can share it with others. We can skip, we can go back without always having control from somebody else. So it's a really interesting notion. And I encourage all you listeners, right? Think about the same thing. Go to your own website. What's the big call to action that you keep driving people towards? What if you change that main call to action to watch a demo right now? How do you think that would impact the conversion rates on your website? Now, I know what you're thinking right now. You're like, yeah, way more people would click that, but how do I get leads to my sales team? Well, that's a whole other conversation. Happy to dive into that, Ken. But the point here is are you really being as buyer-centric as possible? Are you giving the experience they really, really want? Because I promise you, if you do, you will be ahead of your competition. If people can watch your demos on your website, they're going to be more likely to request to talk to sales than they will be if they haven't had a chance to actually see those things live and in action.
Hey, so I think we should unpack that just a little bit, because I think this is a really key point, and we certainly see that with clients and prospects all the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, if I have a book a demo button and Mary fills in the form, now I have a reasonably warm lead. Mary wants to meet us and see a demo. But I think, to your point, some number less than 1% of many of these website visitors go book a demo.
That's right.
But if 15 or 20% of them watch a demo, or whatever that number is, it's going to be exponentially greater. I think your event poll is probably a good substitute for analytics. Assuming that they have an actual interest in the category and product and are in market, watching a demo would be a great way to get somebody even more qualified to book the meeting. And I think that's the sort of the Jedi mind trick, is to get everybody to realize that if we do a really great job with our free demo, right, our ungated demo, we have a great opportunity to convert leads that are really kind of excited about what they saw, and they want to dig in now on, hey, can I actually make it work for me?
We absolutely are. So what we're doing here is we're both educating our buyers, right? Like we're helping them learn more about what it is that we do without always having to get a human on the phone, which is actually way more efficient for both sides. But to your point, what we're also able to do is better qualify those that are demonstrating actual intent to purchase, because those people on your website, right, they're navigating around. Maybe they're downloading a PDF. They're clicking on some other links. They're demonstrating perhaps some level of interest, which is great. If somebody clicks on book a demo, they're definitely showing intent. But this middle ground of saying, if somebody clicks and watches my demo video, or maybe 2 or 3 different micro demo videos, that's a very strong sign of intent. And that can now, again, help us pre-qualify the best leads to engage. And instead of just getting 1 out of 100 people to click the book a demo button, now maybe we can get 20 people of those 100 to watch the demos, because that's what they want. It's a very enticing CTA. And once they've watched those, they're more educated, they've demonstrated their intent. And a percentage of those people will raise their hand and say, I'm ready now to talk to sales, which is great. But those who don't, if we have our system set up properly, we know who they are, and we can then have outreach back to them that's very customized. And we know we can focus our prospecting efforts on those individuals because they've seen what we do, they've demonstrated intent, and we can have higher conversions now. And now we're going to convert 10 of those 100 people instead of just that one person, Mary.
Yeah, and I think that's the challenge, is to get change in mindset as to what are we going to measure and what are we going to go for. But I think really important, I like to sort of say, I want to have our marketing answer the questions that the buyers are asking themselves.
Yes.
And they're asking, what does it do? Who is it for? How can I make it work? Who else is using it? And what does it cost? Right. And if I can get the information from your website, then there's a really good chance I'm going to want to engage with you. But 2 of them, I think, are really sensitive. The pricing thing, a lot of companies don't want that out there. And with enterprise sales, it's a lot harder to put pricing out there.
Sure.
Not because they don't want to be transparent, but there's just so many dependencies that,
right,
configuration dependencies. But also the demo, I think the other psychological barrier is my competitors are going to see what my stuff does.
Right.
And I thought I'd ask you to debunk that one. I have my own way of doing it, but
it's my favorite objection.
Yeah, I don't want my competitors to see what my software does. Have at it.
Well, so we have this with both pricing and like online demos, right? It's like, I don't want my competitors to know my pricing, and I don't want my competitors to know what we do by watching my demos. And my argument, several arguments for this, I'm certainly pro open, demo content. Number one is, if you really believe your competitors don't know what your product does today, or that they don't have it in their lab, or they don't have a friendly who has it in their lab and is basically sending them screenshots and video recordings of how everything works, I think you are misinformed, honestly. And I don't want to insult anybody, but if you honestly believe your competitors don't know how your product works and don't have access to it in a lab somewhere, I think you're probably wrong. The reality is today, so much of that is democratized. There may be very few cases, very specific cases where that's not the actual case. So I think we need to step away from, I don't want my competitors to know what we do. I bet you they know what you do today. The second thing to be mindful of is, I'm not suggesting you have to have demo videos of every single part of your product and showing all of your secret sauce. Right. And usually when I ask people, if they say, well, I don't want my competitors to see what we do, and I ask them, well, how much of what you do you think is actually really that unique? And they say, well, honestly, probably like 10 to 20%, like 80% of what we do, everybody does, and everybody knows how it works. And I say, well, that's great. So I'll tell you what, this will be really helpful to your buyer. Show them that 80% or half of that even, right? Show them at least so they can get a sense for how the experience is. How do people really use this product? What does it really do behind the scenes? You don't have to show that 20 or 10% of your super secret sauce if you're afraid of your competitors seeing that. But that's a perfect call to action, right? When you show the 50 or 80%, and then you can even be cheeky with it. You can say at the end of that video or below the video, there's another 3 things that we do that are so compelling, we don't want our competitors to know about them. If you're interested in seeing those, click the button below to schedule some time for a live demo with one of our reps, right? Like, that's how I would approach it. So I think this mindset of we can't show anything, that's absolutely the wrong mindset. Think about what you are comfortable showing, maybe go an extra 10% just to push it a little bit. And then with pricing, it's actually a very similar conversation, but you're right. In a lot of cases, you can't put dollar figures up. I suggest you at the very least have some transparency around how your pricing works. What are the types of levers that move people from one stage to another or one package to another? So I think these things are so important because, to your point, when somebody goes to your website and they go through your homepage, they're going to want to know about what you do, and they're going to go to your product page, and then they're going to want to know how does it really work? That's what the demo is for. And then, of course, how much does it cost? Transparency on all of those. I promise you will generate more and more qualified leads for your sales team.
So I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, my first sales job at Citi quite some time ago, we had a lab with every competitor's product. We had their contracts. I mean, we didn't just have their pricing, we had their terms and conditions. So the idea that behavior has changed among selling organizations, of course it hasn't. Everybody's seen your stuff. Everybody knows what it costs. They know your contracts. They can poke holes in your contracts in their sales conversations. So I just think it's time to dispense with the myth that you can overshare. You almost can't overshare.
Yeah.
I think I want to switch gears with you a little bit and talk about marketing content and the sales point of view on marketing content. We do a lot of work in this area, but I want to hear from you about what you believe. And you talk to a lot of salespeople.
Yes.
Within your firm and, at clients and prospects. So tell me, from sales point of view, what are the top 2 or 3 things that are wrong with marketing content? How can we do a better job?
The most common thing I hear is that marketing is too focused on quote unquote top of funnel, and that the content that they are creating for the market isn't helpful during the sales process, right? So it's great for bringing people into the funnel, but it's typically not designed to actually help sales teams. And often as marketers, we think, well, that's enablement's job, right? It's enablement's job to create content, collateral things to support the sales process. But I fundamentally believe that marketing in today's world has a huge role to play throughout the entire customer life cycle, from first touch to last renewal and upsell, right through into post-sale. And the reason I believe that is back to the very first thing that we talked about, is that whether they're starting to learn about your company, whether they're like mid or late stage, asking about competitors, wondering about pricing, asking for the proposal, or again, they're in a post-sale environment, more and more of what they want is on-demand self-service content. And who's best at creating that? Well, today it's marketers. Now, I can argue that over time, sales teams need to become better creators and need to better support themselves by creating content that can be repurposed and reused. But today, marketing teams are best equipped for that. And so I think that marketers need to think more carefully about how can we support the sales process, not just how can we support getting the sales team leads. And that might come down to things like partnering with sales to create great on-demand demo videos that they can be using through the sales process as well as on the website. It might be, again, who are the most common competitors that you come up against? And you probably have internal battle cards that the sales team uses, but do they have great content that they can send to their prospect to say, even proactively, right? Look, Mr. Customer, I know you're going to ask about these two other companies because I know you're evaluating them as well. I just wanted to get ahead of it and share with you a couple of videos that walk through exactly how it is that we differ from them and what's unique about our offering. All right. So all of these little things we think about, what are some of those objections, those challenges, those questions that are going to happen through the sales process? I believe marketing can play a much bigger role in equipping the sales team with great content that people want to consume on the other end of it. And that will help move them through the buying journey without every conversation having to be a live call.
Yeah, it's a really interesting area of our practice. I mean, when we have a new client, when we're onboarding, a new client for demand generation work, we start with the sales team.
Yes.
That's where
love that.
We can see the gap between what marketing has done and what sales is doing. And that tells us a lot. There's a lot of information for us in that because the salespeople they're constant feedback machines, right? They're putting stuff out there and getting told no or yes, right? So the things that get them more yeses are the things they do more of. Typically, not always, but a functional sales team is trying to figure out what does the market want to hear so that I can get to the next step toward the close. And we find that those conversations are really fruitful.
Yes.
And not only is it really great in terms of helping the salespeople, which is part of our mission, but it also helps bring the sales and marketing teams closer together because we're focusing at like the point of contact with the market and then building from there. And we just find that's just a really fruitful place for content marketers to be focused. And a lot of times they're not.
I think that's brilliant and you're spot on. And one of the things I would put out there to folks, I think this is a really, really important concept as you think about how marketing can help sales with better content. One of the issues with marketing, speaking as a marketer, is that marketers tend to be too focused on convincing the audience rather than helping them. Now, sales reps, thankfully, modern B2B sales reps have come to the point now where most of the ones that I know have gotten really good actually at helping customers. They're still trying to convince them as well. But what I mean by that is a sales team will ask a marketing team, hey, I need help at this point in the sales process. Can you create some collateral for me? And they'll write something or they'll produce something that's all about trying to convince the person. It's like ROI, it's like 50, you'll increase this by 50% or this and that. And I think marketers need to get smarter about that and say, you know what, especially this content for the sales process, stop trying to convince the buyer. That's not what they're looking for. They don't want to be convinced. They want to be helped on that journey. And just that simple mindset shift, right? Like, again, when you talk about if you create a video or some collateral that would be external facing about how you position against another competitor, let's say, a marketer's inclination is going to be, I need to convince this customer that we're better. And so they're going to talk a lot about, well, we do this better and our customers see X% higher return and so on and so on. That content becomes not nearly as credible or interesting or frankly helpful to the buyer. And instead, the way we need to think about it, again, is much more like modern sales, which is how can we help the customer make the best decision and the most confident decision? And instead, that content we create about how we compare to a competitor should be as honest and transparent as possible. It should highlight where they are stronger than where we are, because that makes it more trustworthy. And by the way, your buyer's going to learn that anyways. So if you're the one to tell them that, it's actually more impactful.
Yeah, we don't do ABC, but we do X, Y, and Z really well, right? I mean,
yeah. And if you can make things that actually complement your competitors, your buyers will love it, right? And you can actually say, it's not just like a check mark. They get 3 pluses here. They really excel here. And by the way, if you're looking for a solution that really just does that, we're not going to be the best fit anyways. So you should learn about this right now, because I don't want to spend the next 3 months trying to convince you.
There's, I think, a key point, right? It's you don't want to waste time with bad fit prospects.
Yep.
And the sooner sales can put them in the closed lost pile, the happier they're actually going to be.
Yep.
I think that makes perfect sense. So I think we need to focus then on what's happening at the moment, right? Meeting the market as content builders. And I do love the idea of helping versus telling. A helpful approach is, I just think, consistent with the way people think of their needs, right? They want help. They don't want to be instructed.
Yeah.
So when we did our prep call, we had this thought process, little thought experiment about, could a buyer do the entire process without talking to a human in the organization? And I want to explore that a little bit, but I want to set the table just by saying this is not like a discussion for an obvious PLG motion,
Sure.
like a Canva, right? Because I mean, that the barrier to conversion is super low for a $5 or $10 a month commitment to start.
Right.
But for things that are just a little bit more complicated and expensive, what is it going to take to make that thought experiment happen?
Yeah. Well, I think this is a relevant discussion no matter what you sell, no matter how big an enterprise, like even folks out there selling massive enterprise deals, multi-million dollars, super complex. I'm not suggesting that anytime soon or ever you're going to get to the point where a buyer can start to finish go through a buying process completely self-serve. But no matter the size of your business, I encourage you to think about your content strategy, your on-demand strategy as the ability to service that environment, right? Like step back and ask yourself, if somebody genuinely wanted to come in, they wanted to learn about what we do, they wanted to see the products in action so they could really understand how it works. They wanted to learn about our pricing. They wanted to make a purchase decision. They wanted to understand how we compare to others, right? If they wanted all those questions answered in a self-serve on-demand way, because they literally could never hop on a live Zoom call, are we in a position where we could support that? Do we have the content? Do we have the people, the processes that would enable that? Right through into explaining how our proposals work, right through into onboarding them. And it's an interesting thought experiment for any company to go through, because if you can equip yourself where you genuinely have the on-demand content you would need to support that process, then for those few that do genuinely want to go through it all on their own, you can actually enable that, and it's a much more efficient process. But perhaps more importantly, what you're now doing is you're creating what's needed for your sales team in particular to be able to always be ready to say, oh, you have that question? You're interested in learning more about that? If you don't have time for a call later this week, I'm happy to send you something that you can watch or read on your own time to answer that question so we can keep things moving forward, right? And if you have the confidence in that library of content that we can genuinely answer all the questions people have through on-demand content, you're set up for success, both for your marketing and your sales teams. And it sounds like a daunting task because you say, oh my goodness, Tyler, I'm going to have to hire 20 new content people to do that. But the reality is you do not. And here's why. Because the expectations of people through the sales process, very different, right? They do prefer things like video where they can actually see and trust and learn visually, but they don't expect drone footage and Super Bowl commercials, right? In fact, they want the opposite. They prefer a video of somebody from your team doing a screen share walking through something, or one of your real sales reps answering a question honestly, right? And that's the kind of content we can make with no budget, just a little bit of time to prep it and to do it, but you're leveraging internal people, you're leveraging the knowledge you have today, don't overthink it. So that's kind of my pitch for it is be smart about that. Anytime you answer the same question more than 3 times, make a video, write an article or something, make sure everybody has access to it and build up that library. And eventually you're going to have what you need where you could say, if a customer wanted to go through this whole process and answer all of these questions on demand through content, we could enable that. And then maybe you actually would put it all out there and say, let's test it and see if people can buy without ever talking to sales. Again, I'm not an advocate for saying you don't need sales reps because their role is still going to be very, very important in many different ways. But that's the way that I think about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the value in the exercise and building a project around that would just be enabling the process for people to come in and out of self-serve anywhere on the journey, right? So it's another way of framing that buyer's journey support.
Yep. And call it codename project Buy Better. Don't call it sell better or market better. Call it buy better and make sure everybody on that team has the mentality. This is a mission to help our prospects buy better, buy the way that they want. And if you do that, it does start to change. You're like, oh, right. Like I shouldn't be like this. We should be going like this. And this should be helpful, not convincing. Very, very important. Buy better, buy better, buy better.
So I want to ask you to just dig in a little bit on one of your case studies for one of your clients. We discussed Marketo and its use of video in a product tour. And the reason I want to sort of dig down on that is we've talked a lot in general terms, and while there's good research in places to support it, you guys have a great case study exactly on this idea of sharing product details for a real brand that sells a pretty important piece of marketing automation. So if you could just run us through kind of the situation and what they learned. That'd be great.
This is such a wonderful example. And honestly, it's part of what really sparked me being so passionate about it. Most of you out there will know Marketo. Of course, they're now part of Adobe, but one of the leading marketing ad automation platforms, really focused on demand gen as a technology. And their teams, of course, are very smart about how they generate demand and service buyers. And I think honestly, it was about 4 years ago now, Ken, it was quite a while ago that they started an experiment very similar to what we talked about here. Traditionally, like most other B2B SaaS companies, they had, talk to sales or book a demo as the main call to action on their website. And their conversion rates were similar with everybody else's. They experimented then with swapping that out with a call to action that said, watch a demo. And then they also tried variants of that, like take a product tour. And behind that button, they had built out basically an online video demo library. So when you click that button, it took you into this dedicated page where you could discover not just one, but I think it was about 9 or 10 different demo videos that walk through different aspects of their solution. It's kind of like the B2B version. It's as close as we're going to get to Netflix, honestly, Ken. It wasn't quite that sexy, but the value of the content was immense. And so people on their website now, their main button, top right corner, right? Main sort of, above the fold CTA, as you scroll down the footer, right? Everywhere was all changed to eventually take a product tour. That's the CTA they found had the highest engagement. What they found was that the conversion on that button, right, compared to book a demo to take a product tour was more than 1,000% higher. Right, which is like almost mind blowing. But you're like, okay, if one person clicked book a demo, more than 100 people, I think that's the math, clicked on take a product tour. Now, in their case, because they're very demand gen oriented, they prompted you then with a form that said, hey, we're going to take you into our product tour. First, would you mind letting us know who you are? Right. And it was name, email, all that kind of stuff. And actually what they found, I'm a proponent of no gates, but they found a very high conversion on that form because of the promise of what was behind it, right? It was like, if you're going to give me access to a demo library, heck, I'm willing to, tell you what my favorite pizza toppings are. So they had high conversion rate on that form. So lots of new leads, but then they were tracking behind the scenes, which of those videos are you watching? And anybody who had, a certain engagement level, watched a certain number of videos or a certain amount of time, hit a threshold where they were then, of course, pushed to sales as a high interest, high intent lead for follow-up. Now on that page, they also have that button that says ready to talk to sales, click here to book a demo. So now they've got these 2 conversion points where people who now click book a demo, they go right to the top because their sales team knows they've watched demos already. They click the button. That's a high value lead. So I'm going to phone those people first. But then people who watched a number of videos but didn't click the button, they're now getting very customized follow-up. Like, hey, Ken, notice you checked out our video on email marketing and on account-based marketing, wanted to reach out because I'm working with 3 other customers who are implementing ABM programs and I wanted to share a few best practices, right? Whatever it is. And the response rate from these people were very high. And so what they found was higher conversion on the website, faster speed to lead, because these people were converting quickly because they were watching these videos and raising their hand. And then also higher conversion rates for their sales teams. It all led to like more and faster pipeline very, very quickly. And it quickly, sort of suppressed their concerns of, the sales team is not going to get as many leads now because people are watching demos instead of booking a meeting. In fact, the exact opposite happened, right? They were getting more higher quality leads and all of a sudden way more efficient. Simple, but man, it works.
So it's all about serving the buyer's preferences in their decision-making process, right?
Serve the buyers. That's what they want. And still being smart on the back end. Like we're all marketers and sellers. We want to find ways to let these people raise their hand and learn more about them. So, don't be shy to put that ready to talk to sales button out there after the demo videos. But yep, absolutely. That's what it's all about.
Well, I think that's where I'd like to land the episode. Tyler, we could do like a whole other half hour together.
Oh, that's good.
It was wonderful speaking with you. And if people want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Please follow me on LinkedIn, Tyler Lessard, Vidyard. You'll find me there. Share a lot of different content and ideas. And also, if you want to explore these anymore, feel free to connect with me and send me a DM. Happy to answer any other questions or, share some more examples.
Awesome. I'm on LinkedIn at LinkedIn/in/Ken Lempit. And if you have not subscribed to the podcast, please do so wherever podcasts are distributed. And Tyler, thanks again. This was fantastic conversation and really appreciate your time today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the SaaS Backwards Podcast, brought to you by Austin Lawrence Group. We're a growth marketing agency that helps SaaS firms reduce churn, accelerate sales, and generate demand. Learn more about us at www.austinlawrence.com. You can email Ken Lempit at kl@austinlawrence.com about any SaaS marketing or customer retention subject. We hope you'll subscribe, and thanks again for listening.